STEM 7.5 is going to be installed by default in program files. Historically, it was always installed in C:\STEM, but finally it's going to be changed to put in the more conventional location. And for whatever other reason you might think, basically the most important thing is there will be less scope for conflict with organisational IT policies, where our experience is that some companies, the machines are configured so you're simply not allowed to create folders at the top level on the C drive. So really it's the right thing to do what everyone else does and put it in program files. Because you only have certain permissions within the program files folder, this means that the example models that come with STEM actually will no longer be installed in the same place. They will be installed under My Documents, and the STEM editor will be changed so that it will look in the appropriate folder in My Documents instead of in the STEM installation folder, so it finds all the things you're used to finding. Shouldn't really make any difference in practice. Now, hand in hand with changing where we install the software, we've also made some changes to where the software actually stores some of its files. So it's already the case that the STEM.ini options file and the default.cnf default configuration file are already virtualized to copies. By virtualized, what I mean is that it would have been installed into C:\STEM historically, but actually the copy you would work with would be under your user profile in a folder called your name and then AppData and then wherever. So that has been the case for several versions of STEM already, ever since Windows 7 really. And what we're going to do is actually STEM is going to save, and as you'll see, it will recycle all of its generated files, including the DTM files, results and scenarios. They will all be saved in a subfolder of this AppData area within your profile, at least by default, so that in your actual working folder, if you like, the place where you think your model is and the thing that you want to save, the thing you want to back up, all you'll see there will be the basic model files, the DTL, the ICP and the SMW. There will be the backup files because they exist solely to make it easy for you to recover things if you accidentally overwrite something you didn't mean to, so they need to be somewhere where you can find them. And it's also the case that the error file and that file that get generated when you compile a model are also there for your benefit, and even though it's unlikely you'll ever look at them, they need to be somewhere where you can find them easily. But there will no longer be all the other stuff, so the DTM file, the scenario folder with all of the per scenario DTMs and per scenario results, and even the working model results, they will all be out of the way. And what that means is that if you want to back up your work, you no longer have to think so carefully about exactly what you're backing up. And if you're mirroring, let's say your working folder up to a network, it means you can easily automatically mirror the entire folder without worrying about mirroring up megabytes of scenario data, which you don't actually need to do because you know it's all generated. So this will make it much easier to back up your work without that kind of mess. So, as well as putting those files, those generated files, out of the way, better still, by default, STEM 7.5 is also going to do some housekeeping for you. And by default, it's going to clean up any files, any of those generated files that are older than 4 weeks old. More specifically, simply when the editor starts, it's going to check the folder where these things are stored, and anything that's older than 4 weeks from now will get deleted. We did think about installing a background service to keep track of this, even if you weren't running STEM, but our judgment was that probably all of our users would be more comfortable with the slight risk of some files hanging around on their hard disk somewhere. They'd be more comfortable with that happening than they would be with us installing an extra background service, because computers nowadays already have far too many background services, and the last thing we want to do is to add to that collection. So this is configurable, obviously. So if I switch across to the STEM editor, so on the options menu, you can go and look for generated files and clean up. And so, as I say, by default, it automatically does the cleanup, and it does it for 4 weeks, after 4 weeks and 0 days. If you want to do it more more energetically than that, you can reduce this obviously, and you could just set it to, I don't know, 1 day or whatever you want. And if you don't like the idea of it doing this all the time in the background, then you can uncheck this, in which case it won't ever do it, and you can come in here and you can press this button to manually clean up the files. If you do routinely have it go in the background, then obviously this won't do anything that hasn't already been done, or hasn't been done very recently. And you might be tempted to think that you could click this button to clean up absolutely all the files, but after some prolonged debate between ourselves, we decided that actually it would be misleading for this ever to do something different to what it says above. So if you actually want it to delete all the files, then you simply need to change this to 0 first. And if I now click this button, which I'm not going to do, but if I did, this would then go and delete absolutely all of the generated files I had saved. So it's also possible to change where it saves the files. So by default, as you can see, it does it in my user profile. So it's me, and then AppData, and then local implied logic STEM, and then generated. And in a minute we'll go and look at that to see actually how it looks in practice. It tells me how big the file size is at the moment. And the alternatives I have are either, if I wanted to make it work the way it used to work and to put make all the files more visible to me, if I select in line with model, then it'll simply put them in a folder under where the model is, called modelname.scn, essentially like it always used to in STEM 7.4. And if I check custom folder, then it's for me to then click this button and go and pick whatever other folder I want to use to do this. And basically, if you have a custom folder, or if you have the standard user profile, what it actually does, and again you'll see this, is let me switch back to the PowerPoint to make it easy to see. What it does is it actually comes up with a magic number to capture the detail of the folder, and it then has the model name. So if you look in this generated folder, you'll see some magic number and then the model name, and that allows it to cope with having multiple copies of the same model in different folders. And the thing is, usually you shouldn't ever need to look at this, so it's really just the internal housekeeping. And within that folder, then you'll see all of the generated files. So specifically, you'll see the DTM and SMR for the working model. You'll see DTMs and SMRs for all the different separate scenarios. And if you're using sensitivities as well, then you'll have tons and tons of sensitivity files. And this is really why it's so nice to have them out of the way, because they are totally generated. There's no need to save them because they can always generate them again. And really, this is all kind of housekeeping stuff, so it's not particularly interesting, so I shouldn't talk about it for too long. So in summary, the software you can expect to find under Program Files. Our example models, and our example models will go under My Documents, because that's the only thing we can consistently guess up there. But obviously your model will be wherever it is you like to work, but wherever it is that you're working, it'll only be the DTL, the ICP and the SMW. All the other stuff is going to be off in this generated folder. And if I switch across to Windows Explorer, let me just find the right one. So, so here's my model folder. This is where I'm working. And so I have, for the model I had loaded in the editor, I simply have a DTL, an ICP and an SMW. Actually, there has to be the lock file as well, because the lock file, if you think about what it's intended to do on the network, it has to be actually where the model is, so that different users would see the same thing, whereas your generated files are on the hard disk. So you have the model files, the lock file, you have the backup files, and that's it. There's nothing else for that model. All the generated stuff is in the folder under my profile, and if I go and look there, so here it is. So this is under users, Robin Bailey, AppData, local implied logic STEM, and in this folder you'll see the STEM.ini that I mentioned. Can't see the default.cnf, but it should be there somewhere. There's a graph.ini. And then there are some other folders. Autosave is another subject altogether, but you can guess what's in it. Generated is where it puts all the generated files. And if I go inside generated, then you'll see I have 4 different folders. It's one folder for each model that I've been working on recently. And the one I was looking at just now was called Transition Test version 5. And this magic number is an encapsulation of the folder that it's in. And you'll see that actually my Transition Test version 4 evidently is in the same folder. And within that folder, then you're going to see all the stuff that you will be familiar with having seen in STEM 7.4 that would previously have been in the SCN folder. And just for consistency, we've even named this generator folder here with SCN because it sort of means the same thing. So easy to understand. It does it all for you, and it just keeps it out of the way, which is nice. And the idea is that at the end of the day, STEM will behave in a more conventional way that will have less conflict with organisational stuff. And in terms of the actual files, there'll be a lot less for you to worry about when you're working and when you're backing up.